Welcome to another episode of Up To. 9 years ago, Up To started as a live event series showcasing leaders who are as humble as they are successful. The humility piece is extremely important as we identify leaders who can inspire others. We try to focus our interviews on the non-business aspects of their lives. And in doing so, we have found there's a real thirst to explore their hearts and minds in atypical ways. Our host, as always, is Adam Kaufman. And on this episode, we are joined by Dan Richards.
During the first season of the Up To podcast, I had several companies and entrepreneurs approach me about potential partnerships, but I'm really selective before choosing to do something like that. One choice we did make, happily, is to partner with Vivid Front, a full-service digital marketing and website design agency based in Cleveland that works with both local and national brands. They've built their entire client base on referrals, and they've won a lot of awards, including the 2019 Inc. magazine Top 5,000 Fastest Growing Companies, North Coast's Top Places to Work, and several others. They're known for their talent, they're known for their creativity, they're known for their culture, a firm I liked before we agreed to partner together for the show. Check out vividfront.com, or you can email me and I'll introduce you to their dynamic leader, Andrew Spott. Our guest today is a true serial entrepreneur. He's been the CEO of Chemical Methods, of Insight Services, and his largest company, Test Oil, which he just sold after about 30 years. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
He's always coming up with new ideas. One of my favorites was called Relax and Ride, which was truly an Uber before smartphones ever existed. I might ask him about that. A little something about entrepreneurs. I feel like the entrepreneur label is frankly overused today. So many people describe themselves as entrepreneurial, and then I review their LinkedIn profile and I see they've always worked for a bank or they've risen the corporate ladder at some big company, and that's fine. I mean, we all benefit from companies creating things, but one really isn't an entrepreneur if you're always working inside a business. Our guest today, on the other hand, is a true entrepreneur who takes risks, who tries things, who's willing to face the failure that no one's going to buy what you create, or the pricing is going to be wrong, or your competitor's going to bring it to the market faster, or you need to buy a building so you personally guarantee the loan. These are what true entrepreneurs are, and these are the types of people who really push our society forward, in my opinion. That is our guest today. Do you know that less than 1/3 of 1% of all Americans actually start a business? Visualize that, 1/3 of 1%. And do you know that 1 in 10 of that 1/3 of 1% actually achieves $1 million in annual sales? So I don't know what that number is, but it's an extremely microscopic percentage of the American people. Our guest today has done that multiple times. He's a very rare achiever. All while shying away from the public attention, this show is a show that features leaders who are as humble as they are successful. I'm so glad he's agreed to do this with us because he did just sell his primary business and he doesn't like public attention. I don't even think he did a press release to announce the acquisition of his company. He's a past president of the Young Entrepreneurs Organization. He's been an E&Y Entrepreneur of the Year finalist. He's a very active and engaged husband and father of 3 successful young adult children. Dan Richards, welcome to Up To.
Thanks, Adam. It's great to be here.
So glad you're here. What have you been up to?
Well, thanks for the great introduction. God, I've never had anyone summarize it like that. And I agree with you. The entrepreneurship word is interesting to me because when I've been growing businesses, there was a lot of time in my career that word wasn't even used or thrown around, and then all of a sudden it's a new word, and people like say, "Hey, Dan's an entrepreneur," and I'm like, I don't even know exactly what you mean about that, but thank you. I'm always honored. Yeah, I guess what I'm up to, and you gave the big news, is my baby, if you will, Test Oil, which I started in 1988. I just sold, and it was a wonderful event for me and my team and actually the purchaser. But what I'm up to right now is, trying to just get comfortable with what I just did. I'm 56 years old, so there's
Too young to retire.
chapter 2, chapter 3 are ahead of me.
Right.
But I had to make the leap and just say, don't worry about not knowing what to do, Dan. That's not ever going to be your problem. For some reason, I'll always find something.
You
to do.
definitely will. And we're going to dive into the emotional side and the mental side of making this decision. But my first question is actually more about your own leadership style, because I've admired over the years your style. And there are different types of leaders. They're not all the same way. But I have been impressed with how you passionately build a team. You get really into that. And yes, you'll give a speech now and then because that's part of leadership, but you don't seek the limelight. What you're more passionate about, I've noticed, is you surround yourself with some key advisors in your life, whether they're professional advisors that you've paid to help you or personal advisors you just rely on to bounce ideas back and forth. So have you thought much about like what type of leader you are, or did you try to become a certain type of leader, maybe somebody you admired from afar, who you read about or who mentored you? Have you thought much about your leadership style?
I haven't really thought about it enough to put it into words, but I had a very interesting and fun lunch about a month ago, right? End of June, and my personal banker, actually my business banker, was getting a promotion and moving to Texas, and she wanted to take me out for a special lunch. And it was a nice lunch, and she was supportive of me over the years, and I'm supportive of her. And she made an ask, said, Dan, could we have a more formal mentoring relationship when I leave town? And I super flattered about that. But she said, because you're the most unorthodox leader I've ever met.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Your
That's kind of what you're saying. So I had to look up, what does unorthodox mean? And so I had to go, orthodox means you're...
Is it a compliment?
Right. I didn't know exactly what that means. So I don't know if unorthodox is a good word for me. I don't even consider myself necessarily a great leader, but I do know that I understand that in order to move the ball down the field, you need a team. You need people that are willing to engage with you in what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And what I need to do is engage with them on what they're trying to do. So, you talked a little bit about my business. What I'm most proud of there is, we had about 100 people, and 80 of those people started with me at entry-level wage, and now they're running the business. And,
You've created careers, meaningful careers.
They've created careers for themselves. I've just identified good people that could actually do the job and then support them. So I guess I do like working with high potential people that don't yet know the high potential people.
And you must have some knack for that, because if they don't know they're a high potential themselves, they're not already in some success path. So how do you decide who has the potential? Is it hunch in interviews? Is it personality profiles? Is it something else?
Well, yes, it's both of those things. The interviews matter, and up until maybe 2 years ago, I had hired all the staff, and the easiest way for me to interview and to bring people in was I bring multiple people at once.
Multiple interviewees or interviewers?
Interviewees.
Okay.
So you'd get them around a table. 5 or more is best. And then it makes your decision making about trying to understand a person in comparison to the world.
So they're competing with each other in the same table.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that because it feels very social and very interactive and very fun.
Okay.
But immediately you kind of say, this is a special person right there in chair number 3. So that's how we did it. We selected. And then you have a special person. And what does a special person have to do to make the next move for me? Just come to work.
See, I can tell even by your posture how you're so into team building. You got excited thinking about creating that room with the table and 5 candidates. How much are you going to be missing having this big business? I mean, it's only been a month, but do you feel like something's missing, or are you still in the early stages of excited? And
I don't want to. I'm not a regretter, because that's just not ever going to work for me. But I have to say that their future is so exciting. And my president, who is now going to lead the business, is a very competent woman who runs the business now, ran it for me, and will run it for the future leaders. She was a future purchaser she was sharing with me what they're doing, and I had a tinge of, I want to do that.
You want in?
I want in on that.
Oh.
So, it's a good feeling that I'm excited for them, and it's hard for me to, withdraw and just watch from the sidelines. I don't know how I'm going to react for that. But if
It's
they
only been a month, yeah.
they take the business, 100 times where it was right now, I'm going to be so proud and so happy.
I often receive questions from podcast listeners that I should maybe ask guests, just general, not specific to you. And I'm often seeking out suggested questions or potential guests to have on the show. And I have to give credit to an avid listener. Her name's Marie, and she suggested that I should ask one of these successful guests the following question. So I give Marie full credit for this, and she's in a family business herself, so that's probably why she wants me to ask it of you here. When do you know it's time? When do you know that maybe the company's grown enough, or you've done all you can do, or it's ready to focus on other things? When do you know it's time to sell the business?
Wow. Marie? That's a great question. You'd never know it's time. And in my position, and probably in Marie's position, there's no luxury of actually getting to pick a time, actually. You can't walk into your boss and say, hey, 2 weeks notice, 6 weeks notice, 6 months notice. That just doesn't exist.
Yeah, there's no boss.
So
right?
what happened to me, Adam, was I was in a business conference. Someone asked me, hey, what's your exit plan? There's 20 people in the room, and maybe 2/3 of us all had I'm definitely going to exit, and 5 to 7 years, and that was the plan. And at the end of us all sharing our answers, he said, just so you know, you 5 to 7 year guys, your plan really currently is death, because you're not taking any action to exit, so it's death. And it hit me, and I'm like, yeah, I guess that is my plan, and I don't like that plan. I didn't know that I did not want to exit, but I needed to build the business in such a way that I could exit.
So how many years before last month was that conversation?
5 years.
Okay, so that sets you on a course to purposefully position for sale.
And then the world leads you to where you should go. I even can't remember the dates. When was COVID? March 2020? Was that the big start of it all?
I think so, yeah.
So February 17th, I flew to Italy to do some skiing to begin my 6-month, first time ever, 6-month sabbatical. I'm like, this is really what I need, because I did feel like I needed a break. I needed to recharge and then come back to the business as a new guy and all that. So 17 days into my sabbatical, boom, COVID hits, and now I'm back in the office, and I have to go back to work under stressful situation. Like, COVID changed what was important. You had to change. Our customers changed. It wasn't the customer anymore. It was the employees. And we just became employee-centric. It was 100%. How do we keep people safe? How do we keep them calm? How do we keep them healthy, mentally healthy? Everyone's nervous and scared.
So you weren't in sale mode at this point,
No.
at the beginning of COVID. Okay, keep going.
No, but I never got the break that I needed. And so I just realized that the world was probably telling me I still needed the break.
You never got like the actual sabbatical break.
Never got the
is what you're
sabbatical
saying.
break. No.
Okay.
So then I was more attuned to how to get my own break. And of course, as part of the 5-year plan, Adam, you're coached into, don't just sit there. Go out and talk to the world. Introduce yourself to a potential buyer. Have lunch with people. Do all this. So I was doing that all the time. And then when somebody came and said, I love your business, I'd consider buying it if you'd be interested. You know what? I was more interested then. And I'm not sure if I had my sabbatical that I could have said, I'm not interested. I got more things to do. But I was a little kind of ready. And so it just happens. But my advice would be to anybody who, when do you know? You never know. And what my wife, and I don't know if she would like that I gave her credit for this, so maybe she didn't say it. But someone told me, hey, Dan, good for you. Better 5 years too early than 5 years too late.
That's true.
So I think I'm 5 years too early. But this is like the market. You can't time your exit perfectly. You don't know, but buy high, sell low. Because
you also have to be financially comfortable with the potential transaction in front of you. But emotionally comfortable is kind of what you were talking about just now. You were emotionally ready because you didn't get your sabbatical. You were working hard, focusing on your team for that COVID craziness. But then financially, you could be emotionally comfortable, but I've had entrepreneur friends who didn't get financially comfortable with the price maybe being offered. So then you had to get comfortable economically with the black and white of it all. And I guess that was something you got comfortable with?
I would push back and say that even being financially comfortable is being emotionally comfortable.
Okay.
Because when you're running a successful business that people want to buy, I don't know anything. I don't need to know anything more. You are financially comfortable. Mm-hmm. The fact that you already have a successful business that someone wants to buy tells me you're probably going to have enough money. So that's not really your issue. What your real issue is, are you going to hit the goal, some weird goal that you set for yourself way back then, of an absurd number that has no basis on anything? Are you going to be comfortable that you are going to or not hit that number? So it goes back to an emotion in my eyes.
All emotion at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Did you ever, though, think about, instead of selling, like hitting it hard for a longer term, maybe recapitalizing the business, putting more money into it, or growing with some acquisitions yourself? Like, was that ever a consideration, or was it like,
that was a consideration, and I had to do an honest assessment of, who is Dan and what's Dan's skills, and if I had a longer runway to do what you just described, you have to start at the bottom as a neophyte, and as a neophyte, you need to get pushed around by the world a little bit so that you learn. Mm-hmm. So I could have done an acquisition wrongly, made some mistakes, then gone and done a bigger one, did a little bit better, then have an official team that could execute real acquisitions, right?
Right.
But you just don't say, I'm going to do acquisitions and think everything's
like an
be wonderful.
Specialist or
no,
something.
It's hard. Everything's a little harder. And since I didn't have experience doing that, I knew that was not a 2-year plan.
But see, that's your humility coming out too, because a lot of CEOs who are successful selling a widget, they think, I'm successful selling this widget, so I know how to buy other companies. So even a little half sentence like that, your humility comes out because you knew what you weren't good at. You're not an M&A guy. You know how to create testing systems with software and oil to proactively maintain machines before they break down. Is that kind of what the business is exactly?
That's exactly what the business does. Yeah, we actually save people a lot of expensive downtime by looking at the oil in their machine that's running 24 hours, 7 days a week. So we can look at the oil, diagnose what's happening in that machine, and give them some advice on how to lengthen the life of the machine so it doesn't cause thousands of dollars a minute of downtime.
Yeah, because a big $1 million machine needs to be running at all time at optimum performance for the company to make money. Those are your customers. That's awesome. So again, congratulations. But you're still young. Do you think you're going to continue being a founder and come up with more ideas and Relax and Ride 2.0 or something brand new?
I've only had one other job my whole life, and it was right out of college when I was a consultant for 2 years before I started Test Oil. So it's kind of what I like to do is have small businesses. But now that I have this type of time, I'm contemplating a lot of things. I told my wife the other day, I said, I got a new idea. She goes, what's this idea? I said, I want to become a ski instructor in the winter and a kiteboarding instructor in the summer. And she says, but you stink at kiteboarding. If I'm an instructor, I'd have to be really good at it. And so that got me excited for a minute, because I do like to be with people and teach them. And I'm like, boy, if I could do it doing sports that I love. Yeah. And I've shared with you, I think we talked about it last night, I'd like to deep dive on some topics. I'm very curious about, what does work mean these days? What are people, what do they do when they go to work? Why are they not even going to work now? What's the future of work look like?
Right.
And I want to take a job at Starbucks and understand, how fast does it take to get promoted? And who are these people that are working at Starbucks? And I drive by on my way to work every day. There's a big sign say bus drivers wanted for a school. I'm like, being a school bus driver for a season would be interesting. Who's the customer? Is it the parents? Is it the PTA or the school board? Or is it the kids? I have no idea. And those poor bus drivers, no one told them who the customers either. So anyway, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to, I'm comfortable. I'll find something.
I love your curiosity. And this might sound trite that you're interested in being a Starbucks barista or a bus driver or a ski instructor, but I know you mean it. Funny related story. We had somebody at our house who was pruning some trees, and he was very passionate and very slow, and no electric tools. He's pruning his trees, these trees of ours, for 2 days. And I got to talk to him a little bit, and he actually owns his own business, and he has 3 buildings. And in my head, I'm thinking, what he was about to say. You might be wondering, why am I pruning trees and doing this on the weekends? He said, because my mother taught me that as soon as I make my first buck, that I should also start another job where I'm at the bottom level, so I can always be close to the people and so I could always be learning. And it kind of reminds me of what you just said.
I connect with what you just said. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. It's interesting. It's exciting even.
That's good that you're so curious. Some people kind of get set in their ways, or just buy the sports car and ski all winter or something. I really don't think you're going to do that. Let's back up a little bit. This so far has been Dan Richards' current, but maybe go back in time. What type of family were you born into? Meaning, like, how was success measured, or was there like an ethos that there was some drive from your parents to have you and your siblings go a certain route, or was it entirely up to you? And this may seem like an odd question, but I have a next question that's going to kind of create the better context for why I'm asking you this.
Yeah, interesting question, because if I answer the question right off the top of my head, I would say I'm not sure what the ethos was in our house and if that even had any effect on my success. But, that would be a shallow answer, because I have four siblings. I'm one of five, 5 kids in 6 years, and all of us are successful. All of us.
I've noticed.
So there's something that was going on in that family, in my family, loving mother. But my mother worked. She worked longer than most people work today. Up early in the morning. She taught me how to drink coffee. I was drinking coffee when I was 12 years old with my mom before she went to work. And she would come home after dinner and leave money for a pizza. I mean, she was a hard worker. I sat and watched my dad work in the basement, and I remember going down there and just watching the guy in a kind of a dark room with his desk and just getting on the phone and working. So I saw people work, and they were so busy and focused and loving. They did not ignore us, and they poured love onto us. But I don't think they ever said, "Hey, Danny, let me see your report card," or they said, "Hey, Danny, what extracurricular are you trying to do? How's your college resume looking?" It wasn't like that at all. It was just, "Hey, I love you. What are you doing today?" It was really a hands-off family upbringing.
But you said "say" a couple times. So an ethos or a DNA or a culture can be affected not just by words, but behaviors. So you watched how your mother worked hard, or you watched how your father was in the basement. So that still could
it all
comprise
matters.
a
Yeah.
DNA, but you're just observing it rather than being lectured. You have to be an engineer, or all of our kids get straight A's. So it wasn't verbalized, but there still was an ethos that was being created, don't you think?
Yeah, there was an ethos. And, the funny story, my dad knew what was interesting to me, so he would take me when he wanted to go buy a new car. And he didn't say, "Dan, come with me and watch how I buy a new car." He said, "Hey, I'm going to buy a new car. You want to come?"
Something to do together.
So I would get to watch him negotiate a car. Because, back then, and even to some degree now, you got to go through the salesman and the sales manager, and you got to, say what you're not going to do, and you have to kind of have a strategy. My dad was great at it. And I would just watch him buy a car. And I tell you what, I'm a pretty good negotiator now. From 8 years old, watching my dad buy Honda Omnis, or what are they, Dodge Omni, I remember it very clearly. I was walking out of a dealership because the deal wasn't good enough. The guy chasing us out. I didn't remember these things. My dad would just take me. He would take me on sales calls to Dayton in his car. And I would sit in the parking lot while he went into the place. Then he'd come back and tell me what just happened.
And look how clearly you can remember all of this.
Oh, I don't
40 years later.
Yeah.
But one of the things I was going to ask you later, but it relates to what you just said, that you're always up on the latest in technology and gadgets for the consumers, for us, not even for professional reasons. So speaking of buying cars, you're the first guy I knew to ever actually buy a Carvana car and actually buy it through a big vending machine. So you're always adapting and trying new technologies. Do you think your dad knows how you went from watching him negotiate to just using your phone to buy a car?
I don't think that he does know, and I really need to, make sure he understands.
Yeah.
He understands the impact he's had. Without my father, without my mother, I'm a different guy.
Right.
And I think they both know
Right.
that.
So the second question that relates to the prior question about your ethos in your family growing up is, I've watched your 3 kids all go to top 25 colleges and all pursue different things with equal levels of success. I want to keep things private, not name the schools or where they work and so forth, but all very impressive young adults. So kudos to you and Beth. Do you think your upbringing affected the types of parents you guys wanted to be? Was it the same? Was it hands-off? Did you ever ask your kids, how was your report card? Because I think our listeners always like to hear, what's it like to raise successful kids? That's like one of the top concerns of any young adult.
Yeah, that's a good question. First start with a great mate, because it's hard. And, without Beth being a wonderful mother, caring mother, making sure everybody's taken care of all the time, you just don't have a stable house. So, God bless Mom. And Beth has been a wonderful mother and a wonderful partner for 26 years. But no, I probably have seen their report cards when they want to show me how wonderful they did, but I didn't know the date that report cards were coming out. I didn't know if I saw it this semester or not, or last semester. And it wasn't that I purposely did that. It didn't matter to me what their grades were. And I think they got it. Like, that part isn't important unless it's important to them. And I have high achieving kids.
You do.
But they got their grades because they wanted the grades.
That was their own drive.
It was their drive, yeah.
But how do you think that's possible, though? I mean, there's 3 children, all 3 doing well. I mean, it's got to be, I don't know if it's all nature. It's got to be some nurture. You mentioned your wife being very nurturing, and that's tremendous. But maybe they were just observing your success in the same way that you watched your parents' work ethic. Perhaps.
How I describe my upbringing with my family, my mother and my father, it's exactly the same.
Okay.
My wife, Beth, ran 6 dry cleaners, retail dry cleaners, for most of her life up until 3 years ago. The stores open at 7 a.m., so you got to fire up the machines at 6 a.m. Means you're leaving the house at 5:30 a.m. That's a working mother. And guess what? Saturdays, one of the reasons I loved my family was because my wife worked Saturdays. She hates this because Saturday work is hard. But that meant parent number 2, the dad, gets to be parent number 1 for a day.
You got to have
and I
your
loved
alone
it.
time with the kids.
And we did stuff, and I just looked forward to being the sole parent on a Saturday. But I would say, from a parenting point of view, when you look back, you don't do everything right, for sure, and you're like, oh, what did I do? And all parents are like that. And I would just say, do your best. That's what I did. I have to forgive myself on whoopses. Like, that really wasn't a good strategy.
What's an example? Does one come to mind that's interesting? That
Okay,
you
so here's one.
Yourself?
So my oldest daughter is a natural athlete. And in the 4th grade, she joins the track team, probably because some of her friends were going to be on the track team. She goes to the first track meet in the 4th grade, and they run, and she's 30 feet ahead of the other kids. She's a really good track person. So I'm like, whoa. So because my daughter loves me and will do whatever I ask her to do, we woke up at 5:30 in the morning every morning and trained for 4th grade track.
4th grade.
4th grade track. Now, does my daughter hold the 4th grade CYO track record in the state of Ohio? Yeah, she holds it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we trained, and she won.
Achievement.
But that's masochism, right? In a certain
young.
way. That's just wrong.
Right.
It's wrong. So things
It's
like that.
pretty common,
Adam.
though. Like, I think you need to give yourself a little bit of a break because, for better or for worse, you're not the only parent who pushes his child to achieve well in sports at a young age. A lot of us are guilty of that, but do you think you've ever talked to her about this? And
We talk about it.
okay,
We talk about it. We do. And she, of course, she's
Doesn't
not
bother her
mad
at
at me,
all.
doesn't bother her.
Right.
But I do know that, I introduced some dysfunctional behavior at an early age. God bless her.
You're an
She's
enabler.
She's such a winner. But there's lots of things I wish I didn't do and did better.
well, I bet I've had other friends sell their businesses. I bet you're going to have more time to think about some of these bigger, long-term topics. Running a business, you're putting out fires every day. You're reacting to what's right in front of you or what just happened. So you're going to have more kind of like mental capacity right now. So that's definitely a good thing. It may not last long because knowing you'll probably start something new again. But what are you most looking forward to having some time to do during this unusual period where you don't have so many things that you have to do every single day?
You know how when you fly like to the West Coast, and some people are like this, some people aren't. But if I would get on a plane and it's going to be 4 or 5 hours and it's a business trip, so I'm not with my family where we're going to prepare to have a wonderful vacation, I would switch into productivity mode, and I would enjoy that time so much because it was just, there's no distractions, phone's not ringing, no one's contacting you.
No employees.
And then I could deep dive on something that I wanted to think about and write about or something like that. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, that I can do now every day without getting on the plane. So,
That's true.
you know, for instance, as you know, I'm a little bit of a biohacker.
Yep.
And I just love health. And there's topics that I want to know a lot more about, like light and light therapies and where this came from. If you think about it for a half hour, you don't get to scratch the surface. So I'm really excited to put 40 hours into understanding more the potential of light.
Deep learning.
Deep learning,
Right.
some a topic that's always been interesting to me, and now no one's going to say, "What are you working on?
Right.
Why don't you do those 3 other things? Your business is on fire over here. Get your
Right.
head out of the light book."
I'm grateful that Calfee, Halter, and Griswold has once again agreed to partner with us. With offices in Ohio and Washington, D.C., this full-service national law firm focuses on all aspects of business and the law, including corporate and finance, intellectual property, and government relations. Let me be clear. I actually approach companies with whom I would like to partner. We just don't accept marketing dollars from anyone. I have been referring my CEO and entrepreneur friends to Calfee for years. I really believe in the firm. One of their notable practice areas is in mergers and acquisitions. And recently, for instance, I introduced a successful entrepreneur in the Midwest to Calfee when he told me that a European-based conglomerate wanted to buy his business. Calfee works with large corporations as well as privately held companies throughout the U.S. and Canada and in Europe and Asia too. So whether it's selling your own business or the more routine needs of creating your first will or anything in between, this firm can really do it all in terms of legal needs. Once again, the firm is Calfee, Halter, and Griswold, and you can find them at calfee.com or on the Up2 Foundation website. Deep learning. Let's continue with that for a minute. Have you changed at all how you learn? Is it by going to speeches or reading certain online publications? I'm always interested in knowing how high achievers learn. For instance, what's your second favorite podcast?
Yeah, because number 1, right, up 2, I love it. My second favorite, there's probably competing favorites. There's all sorts of, Found My Fitness is a wonderful podcast.
Found My Fitness.
Okay.
Okay.
That I really get a lot out of. Just a real scientific view of fitness. And
what do you read? What do you like to read? Do you have something you read every day?
I don't. I would have to say I've stopped reading as aggressively as I used to. And at one point, I considered myself not enough. And so I would overconsume books.
Actually, I didn't plan on bringing this up, but I'm remembering now. Remember, you and I used to have a book reading contest. And we would have this scenario where any book, you read one book, I read a different book, but it was like send out a one-page summary of the book we read, and let's see who could read more books. And any size, we didn't make it too serious with the rules, but that kind of peer pressure and accountability, that had me reading even more.
We read so much. I love it, and
maybe we should bring that back.
we should bring it back. But again, I'm pushing back. I'm like, I'm not sure having contests about learning is the right way to do it.
Right,
Right?
yeah.
And I do.
But in that case, it
reflect
was
back.
more about books. Like I read a ton of like periodicals or the Wall Street Journal every day, or certain newsletters. I have like 3 or 4 newsletters that I will read every single day. So I don't know if you have any like newsletters you're always looking forward to reading, or there's so much different content in different forms these days.
Yeah, it's such a weird time to ask me that question because it's hard. I have to steer away from a lot of content because it ends up to being triggering, and I don't understand where they're coming from and why they're writing this. So I'm really been very
I see what you mean.
selective
Like,
with what I read.
what's the source? Follow the
Yeah.
money. What's the
Follow
angle?
the money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It is hard to really find truth right now, or people too often don't disclose their starting point for a lot of that. But let's instead maybe talk about on the relationship side. You're going to have a lot more time to maybe drill into relationships, whether it's professional colleagues you haven't seen in a while or family members that live in another city that you have more time to visit with. Like, I'm a relationship guy. If I had an unusual amount of free time, I would love to like dig into relationships. Have you thought much about that?
Oh yeah, I have thought a lot about that, and so the old Dan, and which is less than 30 days away.
Right. Not too distant
I'm
past.
a focused guy, and I would know in life, one of my rituals every week is I write down the 3 most important things. And they're not necessarily business, but it's the things that right now are the most important things that I need to work on. And then I make my to-do list driven by the 3 most important things. And then I put everything, my other to-do list kind of in there, but I start there, 3 most important.
Weekly?
Weekly, every
That's
week.
Interesting.
And so now if Adam, you know that I hope that you consider me a great friend, but I'm probably a weird friend, and sometimes I don't return your calls, I don't return your texts, I don't get back to you, and I get a lot of pushback, like, dude, what's up? I sent you 4 texts. And I'm like, you don't understand. I had 3 important things I was focused on. I that wasn't getting in my radar. But now
It wasn't on the list.
It wasn't on the
list. To call you
list.
back.
But now I don't have that driven. And Beth and I talked, and I'm like, honey, you know what I would like to do? I would like us to make a list of people that have kind of fallen out of our lives.
This is what I'm talking about.
And let's go visit them. Like, we do have time to travel. It would be fun for her and I to travel. It would be fun for us to reconnect. Maybe we reconnect with some of her childhood friends. She wants to go visit a girl in South Carolina that, I've met once, but it would be nice to go meet her and her husband, see what's up. And I have lots of people that I have lots of respect for, but, 10 years later, you just don't have the same relationship. So I already have great people in my life. I just need to pour a little bit of love onto those relationships.
One of my mentors, generation older than us, after he sold his business, he went on what he called a gratitude tour. And he went out and visited, I think, like 20 people, kind of like what you just described that maybe you and Beth would do. But it was just him, and it was mostly, I think, business relationships. He enjoyed it so much, and thanking these people in person that he enjoyed so much, it ended up becoming a book about all like the lessons he learned from these various mentors. So I know you said you're not reading too many books these days, but this sojourn you're about to go on could lead to an eventual book or at least some blogs or something that you like to share, because I think too often we don't take the time to delve into relationships in this transactional world that we're in, or reacting to news via tweet, or my producer on his texting while we're doing our show, or anything. It's all so fast. But I love that you're thinking about doing that. And I hope you don't mind me saying this, last night at dinner you told me you actually called a few people traveling here, maybe to like reconnect or even ask for forgiveness. I usually do on the show ask people, when have you last had to forgive somebody? But maybe I'll put that to you, like, have you had to ask anyone to forgive you?
Until you get a little clear headspace, I should say this, until I got clear headspace, sold my business, and then could breathe a little bit, because even the transaction takes a lot of energy, I could notice and get in touch with myself and have a feeling that something's not perfect. I feel like I'm carrying around something.
A lot of weight.
A little bit of a weight. And so I would contemplate that. And, one very important, so I drove to D.C. from Cleveland, 5-hour drive, and Adam's like, yeah, let's fly. It's an easy flight. I'm 2 minutes from the airport. I kind of need to get in the car because I need some time to get on the phone, and I don't want to have a 15-minute conversation if I need a 2-hour conversation, right? And I need to give myself the space
And when do we
that.
take 2 hours to be on the phone?
And you don't have that. So yesterday, I did have a person that I'm ashamed at how I treated this person, and it wasn't out of malice. It wasn't out of because I'm a bad person. It just happened, and
well, you're a human being.
I'm a human.
Yeah.
But once you realize, oh my gosh, look what I did, you don't immediately jump up and say, oh, I'm going to go ask for forgiveness. You're like, well, maybe it's not so bad what I did. Maybe they deserved it. Or, you do all the weird rationale.
Yeah.
And then finally I'm like, no. That was all on me. And I got to fix this. I have to ask for forgiveness. And, I had to ask for forgiveness probably in the conversation 3 or 4 times until I heard the words, I forgive you. I didn't lose the weight. And he probably wasn't as upset about it as I was, but until I heard the sincere, Dan, I hear you, I forgive you. And I was like, okay, now let's talk about other, now let's catch up. Right?
Right. Return to our good relationship.
Return to our relationship.
And so long term, that probably will help you return to a good relationship with this person.
Sure. For sure.
That's awesome. Congratulations, and thanks for sharing that. You mentioned something a few minutes ago. I didn't want to break the train of thought, but yes, you are a biohacking enthusiast, and you taught me that phrase long before it was trendy, long before Dave Asprey and Bulletproof, which is tremendous, and my wife loves Bulletproof coffee. But you were focusing on your personal health needs specific to your body and to your mental state and your demands on your life long before a lot of these podcasts. I remember you told me about Dr. Peter Attia's The Drive podcast.
I love Dr. Peter Attia, yeah.
That was before I even had my own show. So, I mean, you were thinking about this a long time ago. What led you to care so much about personal health and high performance?
This is an easy question. So what led me to care about health is having bad health, and really having bad health.
Reacting to some problem.
There was a time, Adam, and it was probably even before our relationship was significant, when I would have to walk with a cane. When I went to the airport, I would be in the cart where I'd have to get hustled to gate C95, and things like that.
Oh, yeah, I remember that cane.
I'd go to Cedar Point, and I couldn't carry my kids, and I could, kind of go, where are we going next?
You were in your 30s.
I was young. I was in my 30s.
Right.
And in hindsight, I know exactly what happened. I had a very young business. I was being sued by a very wealthy person in Canada, wanted to put me out of business. I had $1 million of legal fees and not $1 million of sales. So stressful. I had some family issues that were stressful. I had little babies at home that needed a father and all that, and my body broke. And I got an autoimmune disease, and then I started taking medicine for that. And the more you get down the medicine field, you might cure your symptom, but there's other things that are happening
Side
with
effects,
that. So I just really would go deep dive into how do I manage what I just did to myself. It took me 5 or 10 years to even understand. It wasn't like I picked up a disease and had it, or a hereditary thing. No, this was done to Dan by Dan, and your body said, hey, that's a little heavy. So
what was the autoimmune disease?
It's called spondylitis.
Okay.
AK spondylitis, and people suffer from this all over. And
what are the symptoms? Was it pain, or
the symptoms is inflammation of certain joints, where it would attack the tendons that attach to the bone. So right now, my therapy through biohacking, I used to take a $1,500 shot every twice a week in order to cure this, but that has immune issues with your body. Now I take this little vial of bugs, and it's like worms. And
you take it like you drink it, or is it a pill?
You drink it once every 2 weeks. It's called Helminth therapy. And I had to really research what are the other ways to do this, to stimulate your body to cure your own self, right? So that's my new therapy. And
I remember one time you told me that you went to your traditional Western doctor, and he asked you, okay, what should we do now? Like you were educating him on the latest thinking.
Yeah. I also have a family history of heart disease. And, there's certain ways traditional medicine treats heart disease. And that just wasn't working for me. It just, I still have heart disease, even the way they're treating me that way. So I've been very aggressive about doing different type of interventions that help my condition. And he loved learning what I learned, because he knew I would deep dive on a topic and share.
This aggressive, sorry to interrupt you, this aggressive pursuit of better health for you personally, what works for you, it's worked, right? I mean, now there's nothing like a cane needed in your world. I see how active you are. Mission accomplished?
Yeah, mission accomplished, but it's always lingering in the back of my mind. So if I don't take the Helminth, the bugs, and I miss a dose for 2 weeks, I'm back in terrible shape, where you can't run or bike, and my knees will swell up immediately. So I'm still on the verge. I just have to manage it.
This autoimmune, I don't know if deficiency is the right word, or challenge, did that affect likelihood of COVID, or did that
Yeah.
not relate? Or
You know what? Don't know. I do know at the beginning that we were told that anyone with an autoimmune disease
I remember
is
that.
probably going to die, right?
Right.
Some short answer to that. So there was a good few months that I thought, oh my God, this is the big one. You know, I'm wiping down the pumps at the gas station and
Right.
taking special care.
yeah,
In hindsight,
keep the pizza box
Yeah.
on the counter for a day. Yeah,
right.
before you touch it.
In hindsight, I think the therapies that I've been doing are probably good for COVID too, not just good for my autoimmune disease. So
Right.
that didn't turn out
Generally
to be the case.
healthy.
Yeah.
What are some of the examples? Like, what are some of your favorite biohacks? Can you give us some, like a cheat sheet of what Dan Richards does to perform at the peak levels that you perform?
Well, I think number one is sleep.
How much do you sleep per night?
How much do I put myself in bed? Because that's really all I have control over is bedtime. I don't have control over sleep time. I have some control, but you have to live with what happens.
Keep
So
going.
I like to be in bed 8 hours a day.
Okay.
And if everything goes well, I get 7 hours of sleep from that 8 hours. But I could get 5 hours of sleep from that 8 hours. And you know what? I just have to forgive myself and try again tomorrow. But sleep number one. Sleep
Okay.
number one. Nutrition number two. One of the things I'm super passionate about is just this problem that we all have with metabolic disease. And I think it's at the root of everybody's problem, not just my problem. And understanding, what spikes your blood glucose, what doesn't, things like that.
It's
I'm
different
so
for different
passionate
people.
about. Different for different people. But you have to pay attention to that. The third thing that you're going to hear about maybe as soon as we walk out of here or within a week, but you don't hear about it now, is nervous system reset. The nervous system is everything. It really drives all performance in your body and your mind. And I think now there's new science that is coming out much more into doing nervous system resets. Your vagal nerve, you need to tone it in such a way. We're always, especially guys like you and me, we're in fight or flight all the time, all the time. That's so unhealthy. It's so unhealthy.
It's a nervous system reboot of sorts.
Yes, and you need to be very conscious and do that frequently throughout the day to get back in a state of not fight or flight. Because your brain, you just get smarter. You just get smarter. People know, the meditators in the world, they know all this.
I love how we're all learning more about personal health, and what's best for me may not necessarily work for you or vice versa. Last night at dinner, I had coffee after dinner. I went to bed right away, but you knew you can't have coffee. And even decaf coffee might have a negative effect on your 8-hour goal of being in bed and sleeping for 7 hours of that. So I think it does differ by person, and I think it's empowering. Like my own health challenge 10 years ago with my blood clot. We now know I'm genetically predisposed for blood clots, so I do certain things to reduce the likelihood of that occurring. But you may not have that same likelihood, so you don't have to worry about those things. I love that we're learning more about personalized health, and I think it's only going to continue, and it's probably going to lead to longer lives and healthier lives for almost every cohort of human, I think, not just the U.S.
It's going to lead to better days for everybody. Each day will be better. And you add that up, and that matters.
Well, I know that you have some better and great days ahead with kind of like a blue horizon of almost whatever you want to do all day, every day for a little while. So what are you most looking forward to doing near term? Do you have any like immediate plans, a long vacation or a little retreat with your spouse or anything to just kind of celebrate this huge accomplishment?
What I'm most excited for, so I'm an avid skier. I'm from Ohio, so I wasn't born a skier, but on those Saturdays with my children, as a family activity, we all kind of learn to ski together. And so it's a big family sport that we do. And I am looking forward to that post-year of college when some kids went and were ski bums at Aspen or Vail or wherever they did. I'm doing that.
Okay.
So this coming winter, I'm going to be a ski bum.
You'll be on the slopes.
And my son said to me, Dad, you think you can get 100 days of skiing? I'm
Wow.
like, 100?
It's a fun
I never
challenge.
even knew I should get a goal. Right now I have to think about
But
this.
you're goal-oriented, so now you're going to want to achieve that probably. Your son knows you.
I got to look at it and say, is that doable, and what would that look like, and how would it affect my wife? She needs to be with me, so we both need to have some
Right.
agreement on what's a reasonable goal.
Well, You have achieved a lot of goals you've set out for yourself, and one of my goals for a long time has been to have you on this program. So thank you so much for giving us some of your valuable time, traveling here to the nation's capital to be with us today on the Up To podcast. It's been terrific, and I applaud you again for the huge accomplishment of selling your company. Congratulations.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you. And truly an honor. I've been a big fan of Up To from its early days. And, for me, I never considered myself an Up To type of guest. I'm an Up To type of listener. I like to go to the events. I like to learn. It's weird being in this chair, but I love it. And thank you for inviting me. It's very flattering.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Up To podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe via your podcast platform of choice. To receive our newsletter, suggest speakers, and give your candid feedback, please email Adam directly at adam@uptofoundation.org. We would love to hear from you. The Up To podcast is produced by the BL Media Group right outside of the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. See you next time.